everyone is doing well. So today, going to do a couple um, examples using Java. So this is unscripted, unedited, just trying to introduce you to using Java, how to um, compile your code, how to run your code, how to use VS Code, and then we'll walk through the basics of Java. Not really anything object oriented, but we'll talk about how to set up your main function, how to um, print, how to use arrays, basic variables, how to use a standard library. And we'll do that by going through a few examples. But I am assuming you already have Java installed, so if not, go follow the instructions on the course website. All right, let's dive in. So I'm going to just make a folder where I'll put all the code into, and then I'll open that folder with VS Code. If it's the first time you open up a Java file inside of VS Code, it will prompt you several questions about maybe an extension or the path. So just follow along with that so that VS Code will know how to work with your Java files. So we're going to call this one basics.java. Exclude in workspace is fine. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so we have just an empty file of code. So something about Java is that everything needs to be in a class. So if we're going to make just for now, we're going to make it public, and we are going to name it after the file that it's in. Okay, so there we have our basic class now. Again, make sure that it's named after the file. There's a way to get around to that, but just for now, follow it. Now, something that it does need is it needs a main function, but the main function has to have a very specific signature, which is public static void main with an array of strings named args. There. And so if you do that correctly, you'll notice that we can now run directly from the main function. All right, so, and we can even click that and it will, let me clear this, make it a little prettier. There. So it runs the program, but there is no output. All right, so let's go ahead and do a hello world system. So Java is a bit more verbose than the other languages we've been touching. Sorry. The autocomplete in VS Code is pretty good for this though, so it can be quite helpful. And so if we run this, it will actually print out hello world. Okay, so system.out.println is what this is. Now let's go over just how to declare variables. This looks fairly similar to C or C++. All right, we've got some primitive types like integers and floats and doubles and chars. We'll do a string. So string is capitalized. Strings are kind of a special type in Java. All right. And we can print some of these out. So we can concatenate these primitives. So it's gonna cast these to strings first, and then it will concatenate all of them. All right, so A plus a comma plus a B plus a comma plus C. And so if we run that, then you'll see 10, it concatenated to them, 10 comma 3.1415 comma testing. Okay, so those are just basic types, int, float, string, there's boolean, there's char, there's a variety of your standard types. If you don't want to run this inside of VS Code, you can also run this program by doing Java C. So Java C is the Java compiler, and then you would pass it the basics.java file. That's going to create a class file, and then you can run the class by doing just Java basics, so not dot anything. And if you run that, it'll do the same thing. Okay. But I'm gonna probably just keep clicking run inside of VS Code. You can also go over to the debug option and click run, and it will do the same thing. But I'm gonna do it the easy way and just click run whenever I want to test this. Okay, so let's try using the standard library. So we're gonna import something. We want a dynamic array. So we're gonna use an array list. So this is, sorry. So this is one of the built-in container classes in Java. And so this is gonna look a lot like C++. I'll explain all of this in a second. Make sure I type it correctly first. Okay, so what we're doing here is much like in C++, an array list is a container. It's a generic, and so you can put it can contain whatever other class that you want. In this case, it's going to be integers. This is just our variable name, which should be numbers, and then we have to create an instance of the class. All right, so this we'll call the constructor of array list and set it up for us. All right, so very much like C++. One thing you'll notice is that this is integer rather than int. So this is a subtle thing, but so integer is a class form of int. So it effectively wraps int. So if you think of int as just a primitive number type, integer is a reference type which wraps int. Okay, and so I did this because array list has to have a class and not a primitive type. A primitive type like this won't work. All right, that'll probably make more sense later on. So just go with it for now. Numbers.add. Let's add some things. So these are just inserting them into our list at the end. I'll do 4, 8, 16. Okay, so now our array list numbers has 3 values inside of it. Let's loop through it and do something. So for loop, basic for loop in Java looks just like most languages for loops, JavaScript or C++ or C. So int I equals 0, I less than numbers. So this is going to have, so we had to call a function.size to get the length of the container. Increment I, and we'll print it. So system.out.println. And then how do we get the value? There's a method called get, and you give it the index. So get index I. Okay, so if we print this, it should print out, if we run this, it should print out 4, 8, 16. Okay, 4, 8, 16, perfect. Okay, let's do a for each loop. Int x numbers. Okay. So what this is saying is that for each integer inside of numbers, bind it to the name x. So this is effectively doing the same thing as this, except it's also helping us save a little bit of effort by saying int x equals numbers dot get I, and then you would replace that with x. Okay, so it's effectively the same thing. for the for each loop, we don't have, in this case, we don't have the index value anymore. We just have the value at the index, which is often what you want. So this is much like a Python for loop. Return. Okay, one back too far. Okay, and we can print that out just the same. All right, so if we print this, the last thing should be 32 that it gets printed. All right, so for 8, 16, 8, 16, 32, because we have both for loops running. Yes. Okay, so that's just some very, very basic Java stuff. Let's do something slightly more interesting, maybe. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it calculator.java. Let's see. We're going to make a start of a reverse Polish notation calculator. So we're going to make an RPN calculator. I think we talked about RPN the beginning of the semester. I'll explain it again in a second. Let me get this set up. Yeah. I'm going to create another main function. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a, I have two publics. I want to create a very basic, like the start of an RPN calculator, and I'll show you what I mean by RPN right now. Plus, 1 minus. Okay, so our reverse Polish notation calculator is a bit different than what we're used to, which is like 1 plus 2 plus 3. This is infix notation. Instead, reverse Polish notation, the operators come after the operands. So this works like a stack. So whenever you see a number, you push it on a stack. So 1 gets pushed, 2 gets pushed, 3 gets pushed. Plus will pop the last 2 values, add them together, and push it onto the stack. Okay, and then it will see the next plus. It's going to take the last 2 values off the stack, so it'll pop, pop, add those together, and push the result. 4 will be pushed on the stack, and then minus will subtract the last 2 values off of the stack. Okay, so this is when we were doing Racket. Racket code looked like this, right? So this is a prefix notation, whereas RPN is a postfix notation. So instead of doing plus 1, 2, it's 1, 2 plus. Okay, you can actually buy physical calculators from HP. Hewlett-Packard still makes calculators that do this. There's some benefits to it. But I thought it would just be a small example that we could do rather than doing like the Fibonacci sequence for the 20th time in this class. So I need a stack. Yes. So we're gonna so I need a stack, and it's going to be a stack of characters. So what we're going to do is we're just going to iterate through this string character by character. So we're only going to allow numbers that are 1 digit long, and we'll use this stack to maintain the results. So creating a stack here and then initializing it with a constructor. So this, again, this just creates a reference to a brand new stack for us, and it stores it in this variable called stack. I'm gonna do a for loop. And you'll notice that I used character and not char. So char is the primitive type, character is the wrapper, which gives us a reference type. We need a reference type anytime we use these container classes that are built in. oops, I was wondering why autocomplete wasn't working. Input.length, I++. Okay, so we got our basic for loop. And so this for loop is going to iterate through our input string. So this is our, I have it hard-coded, but you can imagine this would be like a parameter from args or something, or you can prompt the user of the program to type it in. And then what we're gonna go ahead and do at the very last thing that we'll do, which is at the very end, we will print out whatever the top of the stack is. Wrong key. Okay, so this will print. This will effectively print out the result of our calculation. We haven't computed anything yet. So let's get the current character. It's car at I. So this is just getting the value at the index that we're currently at. So first it'll be 1, and then it'll be some white space, and then it'll be 2, and then it'll be some white space, then it'll be 3, and then white space, and so forth. Okay, and now do we want to use a switch? Let's do some if statements. So we're going to have, if we just allow numbers, white space, plus, minus. Okay, so we need like 4 conditions. So if we're going to check whether it's a digit. Yes. So this is a static method on the character class. Yeah, and we'll pass in ch. Okay. And so all this means is that it's checking whether the current character is a digit or not. So is it 0 through 9? Like if it's a letter H, it would return false. Or if it was a space, it would return false. And so if it is a number, all we need to do is push it to our stack. Okay, that should work. Let's do an else if. I'll just set up the rest of the program. So else if it's a plus sign, we'll do something. Else if it is a minus, we will do something else. Else if, let's see, what else do we need? White space. I don't think we're gonna need to do anything for white space, but and then else, meaning that we got some character that we weren't expecting. We're just gonna print out some error. You know, we're for simplicity, I'm only doing plus and minus. You would probably also want multiplication and divide, and you probably also want to be able to support multiple multi-digit numbers. But for right now, well, we're just going to do single characters, and the result will only be able to be a single character as well. Print line error, and we'll return. So we'll just end the program because this is inside of a for loop. So if we see something we aren't expecting, we'll just return and throw an error, or sorry, we'll print an error. Okay, so what do we want to do when we see a plus? So we have to pop the last 2 things off the stack and add them together. So int b, int a, all right? And then what will stack.push, we're going to be pushing a plus b. One issue is that we have a string and we're iterating on it, which gives us these characters. So this is a character. So we need to get the integer value from the character, and I don't mean like the ASCII value. I mean the actual numerical value of what the character represents. So I believe that's a function on static on character get numeric value. Okay, so we're popping the last value off the stack, we're converting it into an integer. It's a bit verbose, but Java is quite verbose, especially with its standard library. If you've used C#, it's effectively the same. And so there's a million of these very helpful functions in the standard library. I don't expect you to like memorize them off the top of your head. Just be able to Google for them. Java convert char to digit value or integer value. Something like that. If you were to Google that, you would get several examples on how to do it. What doesn't it like? Oh, okay. So we can't just push the numbers. We have to so once we do the computation a plus b, we then have to convert it back into a character, which is a single digit. So there's another helper function. I think it's yes. And so this is where we'll do a plus b. So we're going to convert a plus b, and we're using decimals, so base 10. And then that should be all we need to do. Can we test this? Yeah, let's go ahead and we're gonna have to simplify this. So I think if this runs, it will print out 3. Yes, perfect. So even though we're not done yet, our input is 1. So our input supports numbers, white space, and the plus operator. It supports white space because we're just not doing anything with it, so we're effectively throwing it away. So whenever we see just the space character do nothing, we have that there just so that we can have this else. Okay, let's do minus. So minus is going to be basically the same thing. And I really don't expect you to memorize any of these character functions. We probably won't ever use them again. These are the types of things you just look up a reference, the documentation for, and then I certainly don't ever use them enough to care to memorize them. So a minus b, yep, that's going to be the correct order, I think. And yeah, so now our program should be done. Let me make this. All right, and let's test that. If it's 1 plus, so it's gonna be 1 plus 2 plus 3, 4 minus the result of that. All right, so the answer is 2. I think that's right. So this won't do any kind of error handling for us. The result of each of these operations has to be fit into a single digit, but it is the start of a reverse Polish notation calculator. Let's see. And again, you can also run it by doing Java C calculator.java and then Java calculator 2. Awesome. Okay, next time we'll go through some more examples and start looking at how to create your own classes and how to interact between multiple classes and some more standard library functions and object-oriented features. Perfect.